Gold was found in January 1848 by James Marshall at Sutter's mill. But why was a sawmill being constructed? For a little context, the Mexican-American War is over in the spring of 1847. John Sutter realizes that California is now going to potentially be a United States territory. Sutter wanted to build a town that was going to be located about 2.5 miles southwest of Sutter's Fort in what is today William Land Park and the Sacramento Zoo, that he called Sutterville. Sutterville had been surveyed in February 1846, so there was plans to build a town. There was going to be more Americans coming here. After all, there was already people traveling to California prior to the Mexican-American War. Sutter's Fort was the end point on the California Trail. Sutter sees this as an opportunity to further expand colonization here in the Sacramento Valley, and he needs to actually build the town, so lumber is needed. The sawmill couldn't be just right here outside of Sutter's Fort, because the trees in this area of the Sacramento Valley are valley oak trees that don't grow very tall. And actually, much of the oak trees in this vicinity had already been cleared, as ever since John Sutter arrived in 1839, he starts to play a role in a change here in the Sacramento Valley. It is Sutter's Fort that is already changing the lives of Native people and the landscape. The sawmill would further change that, but trees elsewhere in the foothills was to be the location of a sawmill, because that is where pine trees are. Grow very tall to get a lot of lumber. So who would oversee the construction of a sawmill? Well, that would be James Marshall, the head carpenter at the fort. And in the summer of 1847, it is noted quite often in the New Helvetia Diary, the daily logbook kept here, that Marshall and Nero, one of the Miwok guides, were going off along the American River to find the location for a sawmill. And they do. And that location was in the Columa Valley. It's the name given by the Yalasumni Nisenan village that lived in the region we know today as Coloma. So how does the sawmill operate? Now, a mill turns one thing into another thing. It will mill the trees into lumber, and it's water powered. That's why it's right on the South Fork of the American River. The water would flow through a tail race into a water wheel that would power the saw blades to go up and down and cut that lumber. And those saw blades would have been made right here in the blacksmith shop at Sutter's Fort. Here in the daily logbook, Sutter wrote that he had made a contract and entered into a partnership with Marshall for building a sawmill to be built on the American Fork. So that sawmill about 40 miles east of here on the South Fork of the American River. Now, Marshall was to oversee the construction of the sawmill. There were members of the former Mormon battalion that served during the Mexican-American War. They were here in the area. They would help build the sawmill, but the large workforce building the sawmill in Columa is the native village that was already living there, the Yalasumni. The sawmill was almost complete in January 1848, and on January 24th, 1848 is when Marshall was overseeing the construction, and he will find gold.